Hello from Washington and welcome to the Hill Sunday. I'm Chris Stirewalt. Relief and despair today as police apprehend a suspect in a shooting at Brown University in Rhode Island after an overnight manhunt. While 10,000 miles away, a terror attack at a Hanukkah gathering in Australia carries grim implications for American Jews as they begin their own holiday observances. Meanwhile, here on Capitol Hill, Congress faces a trying week with major questions around health insurance, a potential government shutdown, and the legitimacy of the administration's war footing with Venezuela. We are going to get into all of it today. We've got a live report from our own Robert Sherman with U.S. forces in the Caribbean, plus updates on the Hanukkah terror attack. But it is the fight over Obamacare that has Washington's almost undivided attention this week. Congress faces a double deadline, January 30th for a spending plan to avoid another government shutdown, and December 31st when Obamacare rate hikes of as much as $1,000 a month will hit tens of millions of consumers unless Congress agrees to extend the subsidies. Senator Bill Cassidy leads the Senate's Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, and he joins us now. Senator, before we get into that, I want to start with your reaction to the heartbreaking news from Australia. This had to have had some echoes for you of the January terror attack in New Orleans ahead of the Sugar Bowl that killed 14. Talk about what you know and give us your reaction.
You know, I only know what is in the news. It's horrible. By the way, if you're speaking specifically of Australia, anti-Semitism is virulent. It's on the rise. It is something that should not be tolerated in any political movement or any kind of reasonable discourse, period, end of story. I'll say that as the chair of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee, I've been trying to pass legislation to combat anti-Semitism on college campuses, which of course brings us to Brown. We don't know the motivation there, but everybody's spirit should be with those at Brown, the students, the faculty, the parents, the grandparents. As a parent and grandparent myself, of course I feel their grief.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, when we talked to you 3 weeks ago, you laid out your vision on an Obamacare alternative, or the beginnings of one, and you did it. You managed to win over all but one member of the Republican Senate majority, but you couldn't get to that 60-vote threshold. Democrats didn't come across. Now the action moves over to the House. The House package, as I read it, does share elements of your proposal, but it has a few additions. What's your top line? What do you think?
We have to address affordability in the insurance market. And I want to make the point over and over. It's not just the cost of the premium. For most people, it is the out-of-pocket. If you have a $6,000 out-of-pocket you've got to cover before the insurance kicks in, you don't really have insurance. And the money that the government is sending going to insurance companies is for their profit, but not for the patient's protection. And I say that as a doctor who had to work with patients struggling. I can't afford it, doctor. I'm in my deductible. So I do think Congress needs to act. I think the Senate can still act. And we would act in a way which would put money in the patient's pocket to pay that out of pocket, but also perhaps finding an accommodation on the premium tax credits to address those folks in whom their premiums will be going much higher. So maybe we can still strike a deal. That's what I'm pushing for. That's what I'm hoping for. I think we can.
Okay, so in the House, facing pressure for a discharge petition that would just have a straightforward extension of those subsidies that are expiring. House leaders now sound like they're open to an amendment allowing extending them. If a version like that, if somehow that came together, the House bill plus a short-term extension, if that somehow came across to the Senate, could you support that?
Of course I want to see the details. We've got to address the affordability. Of course, I'm still pushing for the Senate to come up with its own version. Again, a version that addresses that out-of-pocket exposure, which is a much bigger problem than the premiums, but the premiums are a big problem. And so if we can address both, that addresses the affordability. That's what we need to do. And whatever comes across that does that, I will look at seriously and probably could find a way to support.
It sounds to me from what you say like you may agree with something your colleague from North Carolina, Tom Tillis, said. He told reporters, if people think this gives us cover, they're delusional. He said, you know, he voted for your proposal and he said it should be part of the negotiation next year. He said, but basically voters are not going to say to Republicans, well, you had a vote and that's enough. He thinks the pain would just be too great and voters aren't going to buy it. A short-term extension, pathway to Obamacare replacement, is that the way to go?
I can tell you if all you do is a short-term extension of money going of premium tax credits, and of the $24 billion this year going to insurance companies for that, 20% of it goes for profit and overhead for the insurance company, profit to the insurance company, and you don't address the out-of-pocket, people will not perceive affordability. They will not say, oh my gosh, this is working for me now. No, it won't be working for them now. You got to do something for the patients out of pocket. You got to do both. You got to address the out of pocket, the bigger issue, but also address, again, another big issue, which is the cost of the premium itself. I think we've got to do both. I think we can do both. And I don't, and the old axiom, Chris, good policy is good politics. Let's not have a Republican plan or a Democratic plan. Let's have an American plan. If we address it, I don't care who gets the credit. Let's just take care of the affordability issue for the enrollee in Obamacare and do it for the out-of-pocket as well as the premium.
Okay, so the conventional wisdom in this town, and you know how that goes, is that as the deadline gets closer, the number of Republican defections to a straight extension of the subsidies without doing something like you're talking about is going to go up. Do you need President Trump to jump in here and try to enforce a little party discipline, get Republicans behind something?
I don't think the problem was with Republicans. I had every Republican but one vote to put money in a patient's pocket for the out-of-pocket. The problem are Democrats. We need them to acknowledge that that $6,000 deductible is a huge issue, and that just extending the tax credit gives profit to the insurance company, not protection to the patient. So if we can find a meeting of the mind with Democrats and find common ground on extending the tax credits, then we're doing our job. But my problem's not with Republicans. My problem is with creating that understanding of what true affordability means in the face of a $6,000 deductible, and to do that with Democrats.
Okay, so this is a little procedural, but come with me on this journey. There is some discussion about running another reconciliation package, which means just 51 votes are needed. People in the White House want to do it for defense funding, but many people think maybe this could be part of it. Could your bill or some version of it be a candidate for a reconciliation hotshot here? Could you do it with 51?
Yeah, I suppose we could, but I'd like to get it done before the end of the year. If you have these health savings accounts, this money in someone's purse or wallet or pocket to pay the out-of-pocket by the end of first quarter 2026, they can save their receipts. They just know it's coming. They submit the receipts. They get reimbursed. So the sooner this happens, the better. I'd rather get it done sooner. And by the way, reconciliation means that Democrats won't sign on. This is good policy. It shouldn't be a Republican or a Democratic policy. It should be an American policy, and I don't see why Democrats cannot support it if they actually know where people are living, where they don't have $1,000 in their account to pay for a $6,000 deductible. If my Democratic colleagues understand that, I think, I hope, I pray we can come to that sort of understanding before the end of the year.
Mr. Chairman, we thank you for your time. All right, America, if you knew that Vixen, Louisiana, really was named for one of the reindeer, you would know him already. But if you don't, there he is, Chairman Bill Cassidy. With us now from his home state is the Dean of the South Carolina Democratic Delegation, Congressman James Clyburn. Congressman, good morning. House Republicans are getting in the game on health insurance. They're going to bring their own proposal to the floor this week, maybe including an amendment to extend Obamacare subsidies. Are you expecting any Democrats to break ranks?
Well, thank you very much for having me. No, I don't, and I would hope that our Republican friends would join us. As you probably know, these issues have to do with maintaining good health among people, most of whom are in crises when it comes to paying for health care. This whole affordability issue has been a big issue in this country for a long time. In fact, for about 15 to 20 years, I've had a standard billboard that I keep all over my congressional district, and it says, making America's greatness accessible and affordable for all of its citizens. And what we're trying to do here is make health care affordable. And so I do not believe any Democrat will break ranks on this, and I would hope at least 5 Republicans will join us in this effort.
Okay, the Hill's Alexander Bolton is reporting on a bipartisan effort to push through as much regular funding in the appropriations process as possible ahead of the January deadline so that if there is another shutdown, the consequences will be minor. Tell us about the race against the clock. How is the work going?
Well, it's gone on really three different fronts. We also have discharge petitions on the floor of the House. And if we could get 3 or 4 Republicans to join us in that, because we do have a couple of vacancies, to get the issue to the floor, then we will have 3 different bites to take out of this apple. And I think that almost all of these issues, if not all, are in fact bipartisan. And, all that we're talking about here is providing tax credits for low-income and middle-income people. That's the same thing we do for upper-income people. They get tax credits for this, tax credits for that. I don't use the word subsidies because this is not about a subsidy, it's a tax credit. And I think subsidy takes on a negative connotation, so I never use it.
Okay, Democrats are feeling very good right now about their chances in 2026, and with good reason. We look at all these special elections and the off-year elections. Are you concerned, though, that primary voters may be getting too cocky nationally, not thinking about electability in the general election enough to maximize Democratic gains next year so that you have a little cushion? If you get a majority and you get a little cushion, talk about the psychology of that.
Well, I think you're absolutely correct about that, and that's what I'm always concerned about. As you know, I'm a lover of history. I study it almost every day, and history ought to be our guide. And if you get too cocky, there's enough in history to tell us what that will do. I don't think we're about to fall into that. We know what we've been going through for the last several years. A lot of it has to do with our own inability to do the things that are necessary to get beyond our comfort zones and to do what is best for the American people. And I'm hopeful that we will stay there. A lot of us Democrats operate outside of our comfort zones because we know it's in the best interest for us to find common ground. And to find common ground, you sometimes have to get beyond your comfort ground.
Well, you're not just a lover of history, you're a historian. You've got a new book out, The First 8, A Personal History of the Pioneering Black Congressmen Who Shaped a Nation. It tells the story of those Reconstruction-era members and the century that passed between the imposition of Jim Crow and your own election in the 1990s. Tell us a little bit about what you learned putting this book together.
Well, this book, I think, is a remarkable document. When we first started this, we were doing it because of our love of history. Then all of a sudden, the 2020 elections came, and I saw the reaction to those elections, and I saw what was going on. The same thing that happened the last time the presidential election got thrown into the House of Representatives was 1876. And that's what we're trying, the efforts were undertaken to try to get this election thrown into the House of Representatives, hoping they would get the same result that came back then. So this book is not just about a history of these 8 African Americans who served in Congress before me from South Carolina, but it's also about that 95-year period between number 8 and number 9, yours truly. Why is that necessary? Because what we see taking place today is exactly what took place starting in 1877 and led to that 95-year drought, which was called Jim Crow. And we stayed there until the 1954 Supreme Court decision. And because I saw it happening then, I can see the possibilities that it may be happening now. And so I wanted this book to be a cautionary tale to say to people, we do not have to have the same result. If history is repeating itself, we can do things that are necessary to make sure that we continue our trek toward a more perfect union. And that's what this book is about.
Okay, you know you're not going to get away from me without talking about this. Democrats have not finalized their presidential primary calendar for 2028. The pitches are due in a few weeks, but it seems very likely that South Carolina is going to retain its influential spot before Super Tuesday as you want it to. So as is the case every 4 years, you are getting a lot of attention from Democratic hopefuls. Gavin Newsom, Wes Moore, Pete Buttigieg, and others have come calling. Former Vice President Kamala Harris made sure to include South Carolina on her book tour. Who and what are you seeing that has impressed you?
Oh, quite a few people are very, very impressive. I do believe that if we go through the process and we coalesce after it's all over, we will win the presidential election the next time out. I'm not going to be picking and choosing. One of the reasons South Carolina has been such a successful stop for us is because we in South Carolina maintain a certain climate for all of the candidates to come and to try out their messages and do so in a state that is very diverse, 4 distinct cultures, a low-income media market, and you can do well here. And we've proven that because in the last 24 years, the winner of the South Carolina primary became the nominee of the party, and in all but one instance, the next president of the United States.
He's not wrong about that, America. Okay, if you all were feeling jolly in Holly Hill, South Carolina, you would know him already. But if you don't, there he is, Congressman James Clyburn. Thank you very much. Okay, coming up, we're going to have live updates on the Hanukkah terror attack in Australia and the latest on what appears to be the gathering U.S. assault on Venezuela when the Hill Sunday returns. Jewish communities across the United States are expressing outrage and fear after a terror attack on their co-religionists in Australia claimed the lives of at least 11 attendees at a Hanukkah celebration in Sydney. NewsNation's international correspondent Robert Sherman is in Puerto Rico, where U.S. forces are preparing for a potential assault on Venezuela. But he spent the better part of 2 years in Israel covering the war that followed the October 7th attacks. Attacks echoed in that Australia plot. Robert, we do want to get to the Venezuela story, but I want to tap into your deep sources on terror questions. What are you hearing about the Bondi Beach massacre?
You know, I mean, the big thing here, Chris, is that this is something that the Israeli community at large has been watching very closely, because the reality is this is just the latest in a string of events that we have seen. And many of these incidents have been similar. I mean, you see the videos that are now coming out of all of this. People celebrating the Hanukkah holiday, and then all of a sudden shots ring out in Bondi Beach, which is in Sydney, Australia. This is not the first incident in Australia. You may recall that there was a synagogue whose front door was set on fire. There was an incident at a restaurant that was stormed by pro-Palestinian protesters. You also had the Manchester, United Kingdom incident, which happened on Yom Kippur. And of course, in Washington, D.C., where you are, those 2 Israeli embassy staff members who were gunned down. There is a growing distinction amongst the Israeli community that this is no longer anti-Israeli acts, that this is anti-Judaism acts and anti-Semitic incidents that are happening more and more. And you have seen the widespread condemnation that has come down. We just heard from the King of England just a short while ago, but many world leaders, Secretary of State Marco Rubio. This is something that the international community is growing more and more concerned about. Australia is a country as well that is especially concerned about this. They expelled the Iranian ambassador from their country a couple of months ago over allegations of starting unrest in their country over incidents like these. This is an issue that is getting bigger and bigger, and something that much of the globe is very worried about here, Chris.
Okay, so let's go to where you are and turn to the Venezuela conflict. So the seizure of that Venezuelan oil tanker on Wednesday seems to mark a shift away from the drug enforcement line that the administration had been taking. That tanker and its oil are headed for Texas. You're in Puerto Rico with U.S. forces. Where are they heading?
I mean, it has been a constant flurry of activity here in Puerto Rico. This is Roosevelt Roads, which is behind us, one of the major strategic airstrips that you have in the region. Just south of us, you have Ponce, in which there's destroyers tied off in the harbor, constant flow of U.S. troops. And I mean, here's the thing, Chris, is that, I mean, this incident here in which the ship was seized, this is not being viewed as the apex of tensions here in the region, as the president has left the door open for more actions. He has said there's the possibility that these maritime efforts will transition to land soon. You have the Venezuelan perspective. They've been putting out videos of their troops drilling and training, saying if U.S. troops come to shore, they're prepared to use guerrilla warfare type tactics in order to defend their homeland. So none of this is being viewed as being in the past tense. Instead, it's a slow, steady build towards another escalation here, which the president said could be coming. There's a lot of tense talk and there's a lot of tough rhetoric that's going back and forth between both sides. To be clear, the president is not putting out into the open what the next step is, but making clear all options are on the table as you see a steady pouring of firepower from the American side into this region here. Chris?
Robert Sherman, there's a reason that you are the first ever international correspondent for NewsNation. Thank you for your time this morning. Okay, joining us now is a Republican senator from Wisconsin, Ron Johnson. Senator, you serve on the Homeland Security Committee and you are its former chairman. What do we know about the origin of this Australia attack and any implications for America's Jewish communities?
Good morning, Chris. Well, we don't know anything more than what's been reported. It's obviously an action of anti-Semitic origin. We are seeing the rise of anti-Semitism around the world, most depressingly on American campuses. I appreciate what the Trump administration is doing to bring those universities and hold them accountable for, any type of the dissemination of anti-Semitism. So this is something everybody in the world ought to be concerned about.
Okay, turning to our second topic with Robert, what's going on with Venezuela. You've been, as I understand it, broadly supportive of the administration's efforts against the Maduro regime in Venezuela and hoping for a new leadership there. But the War Powers Act requires that the president seek congressional authorization for any military activity within 60 days of commencing hostilities. It has now been 103 days, and we just heard from Robert that another big escalation might be on the way. How does this comply with the War Powers Act?
Well, first of all, I don't think there's been a president since the War Powers Act was passed that it hasn't viewed as unconstitutional. So set that aside. The Maduro regime is an illegitimate regime. They are heading up a narco-terrorist state that is poisoning Americans. And, from my standpoint, I hope that Maduro takes the hint and leaves with him still being alive, as opposed to requiring stronger action. But I'm sure that what President Trump is trying to accomplish is encourage him to leave so that the duly elected, legitimate government can take power in Venezuela and really return Venezuela to what should be a highly prosperous country in South America.
Okay, we're packing it all in today. You have been working on an Obamacare alternative for as long as I have known you, for as long as you have been in the Senate, but your party tends to lose its nerve on this question. The president sounds non-committal about an extension of the current Obamacare subsidies, but pressure is growing. Time is running out. Do you see a way, we talked to Chairman Cassidy earlier, do you see a way to deal with something more than just continuing the status quo here before time runs out?
Well, first of all, let's properly define the problem. We're not talking about continuing Obamacare subsidies. We're talking about continuing the enhanced subsidies that has led to massive fraud. This is something Democrats passed for COVID. It's supposed to be temporary. They are the ones that set them to expire at the end of this year. Republicans had nothing to do with this. The only people affected by the lapse of these or the ending of these subsidies are the approximately 24 million people on the exchanges. If you have Medicare, Medicaid, employer-sponsored care, VA care, none of that is going to be impacted directly by this. Now, premiums are going up because of Obamacare has caused consolidation in the industry. So of the 24 million people on the exchanges, 22 million will just go on to the normal Obamacare subsidies. So they're not going away. It's just a flawed design of Obamacare. There's about 1.6 million people whose subsidies go away. These are people earning more than 400% of poverty line. I'm actually working with some Democrat senators to focus on that population. They were lured in retirement. A lot of them, they're not old enough to qualify for Medicare. They literally are facing, because of Obamacare, premiums in excess of $30,000 a year. I'd like to help those people. We can do that for a couple of $2 billion a year. We can fix, that is the problem right there. But Democrats have been very successful in making it seem like the other costs, rising costs in healthcare, are due to the expiring of these enhanced subsidies. Obamacare has caused this consolidation. The solution, Chris, is consumerism, free market competition. In the rest of our economy, it guarantees the lowest possible cost, the best quality, best level of customer service. Gee, wouldn't that be nice for healthcare? We've driven consumerism and the benefits of free market competition out of healthcare. We need to reinsert it.
How come Republicans didn't, in the past 15 years that you've been talking about this, how come Republicans didn't get to an answer on this before? What is the reason that it's Lucy in the football? Why do we keep coming back around on this when we're talking to Republicans?
Well, one of the reasons is because of the 60-vote threshold in the Senate. What was passed through reconciliation with 60 votes back then in 2010 is difficult to undo just through reconciliation. So it's been a difficult task. Listen, I was not impressed with our attempt in 2017. I never liked the slogan repeal and replace. I always focused on let's repair the damage done by Obamacare and transition to a system that works. That still ought to be basically the wording that should guide our actions. Repair the damage done, which starts with describing it. Our problem is we have Democrats in a complete state of denial. All they're trying to do is mask what a miserable failure Obamacare is. They want to throw hundreds of billions of dollars. They're happy to perpetuate the close to $30 billion of annualized fraud caused by these enhanced premiums, which created no premium policies. About 6 million people of the 24 million are probably phantom. And we've got reports close to $30 billion in fraud. Anybody who wants to extend these enhanced subsidies is willing to perpetuate that massive fraud. I'm not willing to do that. Most Republicans aren't.
All right, Senator, we're going to have to leave it there. We thank you. All right, America, if you were playing reindeer games in Rudolph, Wisconsin, you would know him already. But if you don't, there he is, Senator Ron Johnson. We thank you. There is still much more ahead. Our Best in the Business panel of journalists will take stock of the big news from Australia, Venezuela, and around the world. Stay with us. Joining us now, it's our Best in the Business panel of journalists. George Will is a senior political contributor here at NewsNation, and he is the Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for The Washington Post. Julie Mason, the host of The Julie Mason Show on SiriusXM's POTUS channel, where you can also hear this show every Sunday morning. And Franco Ordonez, the White House correspondent for NPR. Mr. Will, we start with you. Anti-Semitism is with us always, it seems. It is inescapable on the right, on the left, in Australia, on every continent, in every place. How do I avoid the enervating feeling of defeat on this?
We've lived through for 2 centuries now the age of ideologies: communism, fascism, socialism, liberalism, conservatism, and the most successful, because the most durable, is anti-Semitism. And it is probably the most durable because it is far and away the stupidest, the one that has simply no basis in social facts. Which cuts it sort of untethered from conditions, which is why it thrives. And there's nothing you can do about it except find them, quarantine them, refute them, and make them feel shame if they can.
The work of every generation. Franco, we have a tanker full of Venezuelan oil, and it's going to Houston, as Mr. Will said in the break, coals to Newcastle. But we're bringing this oil into the United States. We heard from Robert, Puerto Rico is heating up. We're acting bellicose. How committed is this administration to regime change in Venezuela? And what is happening here?
I mean, I think that is really the big question. It is, I mean, clearly it's not just wanting to attack a few boats. It's not just narco-terrorism. The oil tanker is an exact example of that. I actually asked Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, about what was the interest in this. Are we going to be seeing more oil tankers? I mean, clearly there's perhaps some unfinished business. If you remember the first Trump administration, they pushed a lot for regime change at that that time. So I think you're seeing some of that. I also think we should remember who is the Secretary of State and the acting National Security Advisor, Marco Rubio. He has been pushing for this for years and years and years. He would love to see Venezuela topple. It would have an impact on Cuba and all those Florida politics that are involved.
Yeah, because if you take out Caracas, if you take out the regime in Caracas, that leaves Cuba even more isolated, and they don't have the resources. I guess that oil was going to Cuba?
I'm not exactly sure exactly where that specific oil was going, but that is exactly right. It would hurt not only Venezuela, it would hurt Caracas. But if you look at the national security strategy, it could also, there's implications that it could also hurt China. It could also hurt Russia. It could also hurt Iran, which has influence in Venezuela. And, you know, that goes into the whole spheres of influence topic that the U.S. is trying to get a sphere of influence in the Western Hemisphere and push out those other big nations and big powers out of the U.S. sphere.
Julie, as Franco alludes to,
yes,
we do have this new defense document out, and the idea is basically it's a sort of 19th century energy. The United States will take a Monroe Doctrine approach to the Western Hemisphere and do what we want to do in the Western Hemisphere, and the rest of the world can sort of fend for itself. Democrats say that this is a distraction, that this is a distraction from, I don't know whether it's the Epstein files or whatever it's supposed to be a distraction from, or Obamacare or whatever it is. This is like a real thing, though. This is the Hexethism, right?
Yes, but I mean, how functional is it? Has Trump read it? Does he know what's in it? Is this an expression of his values and interests, or is this something they patch together in what is left of the National Security Council? And will they act on it, or is it just like some set of notions?
The post hoc intellectual project of explaining rather than directing.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, okay. Well, so I am kind of bummed. All right, coming up, America, we're going to go whole hog on the politics of health insurance. We found a very interesting number that may explain how the Obamacare showdown may end when the Hill Sunday returns. Democrats are delighted and Republicans are scrambling to get ahead of a series of really pretty dire ratings for President Trump's job performance. So let's check back in on our whole hog politics average. This is the net approval for the president, and you can see here that he has hit a new low. He's more than 21 points on the bad side, which is a 25-point drop since the beginning, back in January. The president and Democrats agree, it would appear, on what they think the cause is: affordability. A new poll from the Associated Press and the National Opinion Research Center would seem to bear that out. Here are the president's ratings on individual parts of his administration. You can see he is underwater on every single one except for border security, and it all funnels down to this, his worst ratings, the economy and healthcare. But here's what caught our eye. Independent voters are the majority makers, and they moved bigly for Trump and the Republicans in 2024. So here's their verdict on the first year of MAGA 2.0. This is, frankly, a nightmare. Look at what is at the bottom. It's not healthcare, it's the economy. So if swing voting independents are giving your guy a 15% score on the economy, your party is in big trouble. So how do we explain the healthcare part? Well, look at this one. This is Republican approval ratings for Trump on the issues. Obviously, the register is much higher. These are bigger bars, starting at 92% on border security, but the drop-off from there is actually kind of steep, moving down through issues like crime and even immigration. But what's at the bottom for Republicans? Not the economy, as it is for independents, but rather healthcare. 59% is not bad when you're talking about all voters, but 59% with your own party means you have some coalition problems. I doubt seriously that too many Republicans are upset that MAGA is doing too much on healthcare. Trump's big, beautiful bills cut Medicaid. It was the most substantial clampdown on welfare spending in a generation. More likely, it is that the new MAGA coalition, which includes so many former Democrats and so many working-class Americans, is freaking out about the skyrocketing cost of health insurance. That leaves Republicans stuck between their old politics, which call for more free market solutions, and their new electoral coalition that wants more free stuff. Just ask Josh Hawley.
In my state, premiums are already going up by between 24 and 50%, depending on the health care plan, depending on the region of the state. I mean, so we are looking at a massive crisis unless Congress acts, and acts soon.
And we will act by coming back with our best in the business panel of journalists. Franco, we begin with you. President Trump talked about this on Friday, and he said he wants Congress to do something great. But Congress is not going to do anything, Republican Congress is not going to do anything until he tells them what he wants them to do. Is the president ready to actually jump in on health insurance and Obamacare and have a plan?
Having a plan on health care.
Or preferring a plan?
I mean, I think Trump perhaps would like to have a plan, but we haven't seen one. We have never seen any kind of details on this. I mean, this really feels like deja vu from the first administration, from the first effort. Trump's pushing, repeal and replace, but replace with what? Nothing is presented. I mean, I am very curious about how this is going on because the Republicans that I hear from are very, very nervous about what is going to happen. They're worried that this is going to become another issue in the midterms, and they don't have an answer, and it's, you know, it's dangerous for them.
Julie,
yes.
Discharge petitions are all the rage.
Oh,
they're all the rage.
4 of them live right now.
All the rage in
yes.
Washington. And one of the things that people would like to discharge would be a vote on clean, I hate the word, but an unconditional extension of current Obamacare subsidies. So this is putting pressure on Mike Johnson and House Republicans. They say they're going to allow an amendment to their version of Senator Cassidy's plan when they bring it forward. Who's going to win this game of chicken?
Unclear. I believe there are enough Republicans to do something in the House on the Affordable Care Act subsidies with a little direction from the president and some signals from the Senate that they might do something. But the Senate seems really blithely unconcerned about this, or maybe they'll do it later. But the House is where all the activity is. The Senate is like, well, you know, we're done with that. So I can't really game it out. But there's potential for something to happen. But
There are potential ideas of a plan.
Well, you know, before Mike Johnson, there weren't unknown votes in the House. You know, you went into every vote knowing exactly how it was going to turn out. Now it's just kind of like...
Somewhere John Boehner is shaking his head disapprovingly.
Laughing at all of us.
Exactly.
Yep.
Mr. Will, what's the matter with Republicans on health care? As we talked to Senator Johnson, he got elected talking about this, right? This was the animating idea of the Republicans in the Obama era. And then, as Franco alludes to, they whiffed in 2017. Now they find themselves very predictably back in the same situation. What is the fundamental problem here?
The fundamental problem is we don't have market forces that he was talking about. I've talked to a ballroom full of people before, 800 people, and I'll say, how many of you, when you go to the doctor and he or she says, I want to give you the following test, say, how much is that going to cost? Right. Not one hand in a room goes up because of a third-party payer. Now, as long as that's happening, and as long as today 10,000 more baby boomers are going to retire into the Medicare and system, 10,000 every day for the last 15 years or so, and all the way through 2030 when all 78 million of them will have retired, and Americans are living unconscionably long, and they become eligible for a much more interesting cocktail of ailments.
Well, we want some of them to hang around, Mr. Will.
Yeah, I'll give just one statistic.
Okay.
The fastest growing in percentage terms age cohort that the Census Bureau keeps track of are Americans 85 years old or older, health care costs for which are 5 times higher than for a 55-year-old. And an enormous amount of that is in the last 6 months of life. Now, you say, why don't they solve this? The problem is intractable. The financial burdens are hideous, and the bioethical problems that are woven into this are insoluble.
Okay, Franco, can the Trump administration strangelove this whole deal and learn to love the idea that they're going to lose midterms, right? So there's freedom that comes in giving up, right? that you basically say, we barely have a majority in the House, kiss it off, do what you want to do, use your executive authority. Yeah, you're going to get impeached again, but quit doing this stuff, and then they don't have to extend the Obamacare subsidies, and they don't have to deal with all of this stuff. Or do you think, especially given what we saw in Indiana, that the president is going to say, we are going to fight, 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 fight?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the easiest question you could ask me. President Trump is not going to back down. He's never going to back down. It's in his ethos. Of course, he's going to fight, fight, fight. He will deny losing or anything. He will blame he'll blame the Democrats. He'll blame, a scam, whatever. I mean, take affordability argument. He's calling that a scam, but everybody is feeling it.
Right.
There's in no way will Trump ever accept anything but fighting and victory. He is going to continue to fight.
But does that mean that he's willing to do things like extend Obamacare? Like saying you're going to continue to believe that you're going to hold the House carries implications about what there's some epistemological closure that's required here. Okay, if that's true, then we're going to have to do a bunch of other things. He's not going to do those other things.
No, I don't think he's going to do those other things, but I think he will pivot to other issues where he can, claim victory. He's always going to focus on the issues that he can win on, and there are issues where he can do. I mean, when you're talking about, again, affordability, he's losing on grocery prices, but he talks a lot about gas.
Julie,
Yes.
Jim Clyburn's worried that Democrats are too excited, that they're already taking the win.
They are. And what are they going to do with it? Are they just going to impeach everybody? I mean, half the country, half the country can't even finance their basic needs.
But if
maybe start there.
But if they don't pick the right candidates now.
Oh yeah,
right?
In Nashville.
Yes,
let's run a progressive in a red district.
So how concerned do you think Democrats are versus how concerned they should be about picking moderates? And
they should be concerned because Nashville was a warning. Don't run progressives in red districts and expect a miracle. And I feel like they want to do that in a lot of places.
We have just a moment left, but I want to direct everybody to Mr. George Will's column on the matter of MIT. And I always learn something from you. But let's take a closer look at MIT, one target of Trump's blunderbuss. And you talk about how well MIT did, and now they're here at the point of the spear. We just have a minute left, Mr. Will, but talk about why you wrote about MIT.
Because it is a great institution. Interesting because 94% of their undergraduate degrees are in STEM subjects. That is, not a lot of people are taking gender studies and ethnic studies and the studies. It's a serious place with an enormous multiplier effect throughout the American economy. No one there no applicant from a family under $200,000 in annual income pays a dime of tuition. They have never had legacy admissions. In other words, MIT is doing what the famous compact that the president proposes for higher education would. They've been doing it for years.
They're already doing what they wanted them to be doing. Also, Mr. George Will knows how to wear a tie that feels Christmassy without being schlocky, and we appreciate that about him very much. Panel, we thank you guys very, very much. Coming up, a lasting legacy thanks to a little work from a Schuyler sister. Your almanac is next. This is your almanac for today, Sunday, December 14th, 2025. Amid the fight for a more perfect union, founding father Alexander Hamilton and Elizabeth Schuyler made their own union official on this day in 1780. Like almost everything in Hamilton's life, George Washington was a part of the story. Hamilton and Schuyler had begun their courtship at a winter ball hosted by the then general of the Continental Army. They were wed just 10 months later. The 23-year-old Hamilton had by then risen from Washington's clerk and errand boy to trusted advisor and strategist. From that perch, he won the chance to command troops in the field, securing his place in the leadership of the new nation. You all saw the play, so I won't tell you the story, but the champion of the Constitution, the first Treasury Secretary, economic savior of the infant republic, the duel at Weehawken, yada, yada, yada. There is no monument to Hamilton in Washington other than a statue outside the Treasury. But there sure is one for George Washington, who, as coincidence would have it, died on this, the Hamilton's wedding anniversary in 1799. It would be none other than Elizabeth Eliza Schuyler Hamilton who would undertake the task of a monument for Washington. After her husband's death in 1804, the widow Hamilton threw herself into a fundraising campaign alongside Dolly Madison for the project. And that is how it came to be that a 90-year-old Eliza Hamilton was present for the laying of the cornerstone of the Washington Monument that stands to this very day. So whatever you're treasuring this week, we hope it's monumental. Until next time.